Okay, well, it is 12:06. I'd like to call the meeting of the Legislative and Governmental Affairs Committee to order. And can we get a roll call, please, Michelle?
Chair Desar.
Here.
Member Chaplin. Here. Member LaPlante.
Here.
Member Renathan. Member Salmon. Here. Member Zay.
All right, thank you. I move approval of minutes from the Legislative and Governmental Affairs Committee regular meeting Tuesday, March 22nd, 2020. I made the motion. You're a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that's passed. I don't have any chairman's remarks. I'd just like to welcome our lobbyist, Chip Humes, into our meeting to talk about the spring legislative session. And shortly, hopefully, we'll also welcome Mark Collins. Do we have?
He's logging in right now. He just texted me
Perfect.
telling me he's logging in. So Chip is on there right now, but I think he's gonna defer to Mark first.
Okay, great.
I think his intention was to back Mark up. Yeah,
That's correct.
yeah, no public comment.
You think maybe we could start with the one we have, just ask them to flip flop?
Yeah.
I believe,
Mark just joined.
yeah,
Okay.
I was gonna say, I think Chip is going to supplement it. From
I see.
Mark's report.
I mean, whoever we have, we can see on the screen.
They're not sharing the video
Mark
There.
Willis.
Hello, Mark.
I'll be up on the screen in just, I had to move locations here. All right. All right, I am here. Hello, everyone.
Mark. Well, thank you. How are you?
Doing great. Doing
Good.
great. Getting back to a level of normalcy, I see, right? Folks actually in a boardroom, which is great to see.
That's right. That's right. Well, how did some of our board legislation pass?
Sure. So do you want me to give like a general recap of kind of sort of the budget, the appropriations, supplemental, that kind of stuff, or just kind of sort of cut to the
Great.
chase?
Why don't you give us an overview, Mark, and then talk more specifically. I mean, like one of the questions
Sure.
I have, $1.8 billion targeted tax relief, how will that affect our constituents? But yeah, start with an overview. That would be fantastic. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. So I won't. So I wouldn't have been boring you. It's on my list. So obviously a little bit of a strange legislative session this year. We have a adjournment date of April 8th, which actually carried its way into April 9th. But shockingly, they did everything, including the budget, the BIMP, the budget implementation bill, supplemental appropriations, you name it. They got it done in the wee hours of the morning. So the Senate adjourned that Saturday, April 9th to 3 a.m. House went all the way through the night and adjourned at 6 a.m. But wrapped it up. So House Bill 900, which was, and there was some strange things that happened too. Like typically you'll have a bill that'll be like a supplemental appropriation for the prior fiscal year, and then a separate bill that'll have the new FY fiscal year appropriations. But a lot of these things got kind of sort of put into one, and mainly it's because bills that were not already through a chamber sitting in another chamber, ready to be stuffed full of budgetary items and then sent back to the other chamber on concurrence. There just weren't that many bills left at the end of the session. So in any event, House Bill 900 was a FY22 supplemental and an FY23 appropriation. Is what it wound up being. So it was what I would call a balanced and surplus budget. So you don't hear that very often in the state of Illinois. It was a $46.5 billion budget that passed along party lines. So Democrats voted for it, Republicans voted against it. You could imagine the arguments on both sides, right? I mean, the Democrats, right, boasted that it was a balanced surplus budget. The Republicans said it was basically on the backs of, federal government COVID funding and the like. Nevertheless, it was balanced. It did have a surplus. It was a $2.4 billion increase over FY22. and actually a $1.2 billion increase over the governor's introduced budget. So just, a couple of kind of crazy, strange things that you don't usually see. I'll go through just a couple highlights on education. So K through 12. Education spending included about 9.8 billion in general revenue funds. So out of that, basically $46 billion budget, about 10 or about 20% of that budget funds general revenue funds K through 12 education. Early childhood education saw an increase of 54 million. Higher education, for the first time in quite some time, all state universities got a 5% increase on operational lines. For folks like me that have kids in college, MAP grants are a big deal. Hold on one second here. I thought my video was on.
Yeah, asking if we could see you, because I think that one of the beauties of getting to know you better is to actually to see you, I mean.
Absolutely. So
I've known
think
Mike for like 15 years through our associations in South Naperville, but the rest of you don't know him as well as I do. We lost you again, Mark. Can you turn your camera on?
All right. So, right. So the problem is I've got a dual purpose. I'm going through my notes on here, and I have you minimized on my screen. So of course it won't let me do both things at once.
I gotcha.
Right. So every time I maximize my screen here, but let me try one thing to see. I guess nobody's ever told me that I disappear when I do that.
Our kids went to.
All right. Well, I apologize. I will pop back on the screen when I'm kind of through here, because I'm sure there's going to be some questions about this. So I was talking about higher education. So on the higher education side of things, there was the 5% increase for operational lines for all the state universities. MAP grants, which a lot of the kids take advantage of to help fund college, that actually increased for the first time in a long time by 25%. So for those folks that got maximum awards of about $6,600, those now went up to almost $8,600. So about $2,000 a year in increased MAP grants. Public safety was another big line item. The budget funded this, what's called R3. It's Restore, Reinvest, and Renew program. It's got about $30 million in gang witness protection program money, about $20 million in purchases for less lethal equipment for police forces, crime reporting pilot program for $12 million, and then IEMA, the emergency management, they got budgeted funds there for an increase. The Education Training and Standards Board got a $30 million appropriation for body cams for the police force. There was a recruitment and training grants of about $5 million. There was, and then the Illinois State Police. This was a big one. And again, for the first time in a long time, $18.6 million for 3 new cadet classes. So state police is going to add 300 sworn officers. So I have no doubt that the DuPage area will see an increase in officer presence from the state police as well. Human Services, Department on Aging got 16.2% increase for programs to assist elderly. Healthcare, state's medical assistance program, Medicaid. This is kind of a staggering number we'll get to, but Medicaid received a $2.1 billion appropriation. It was about a $33 billion increase overall. Now, $8 billion of that $33 billion is out of GRF. A lot of it's federal funds, but there was a $2 billion increase through the state appropriation. This is a COVID staggering number, I think, but this fund is expected to service a population of 3.6 million, which is an increase of 630,000 individuals since the start of the pandemic. So I'll pause there for a second, right? I mean, when you look at this in overall spending, Medicaid is servicing nearly 1/4 now of the Illinois state population. So really a big number. I'll close today on talking about some of the closing of some of the capital funding areas, but I'll just note that the other bill on capital funding was in House Bill 900 as well. It continues the historic rebuild $45 billion capital bill, has ongoing capital initiatives through that. It also anticipates $17 billion coming in from the federal government on the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, so IIJA. So that was the $1.3 trillion federal bill that had passed, I believe it was earlier this year, or maybe it was late last year, but we're going to get about $17 billion of that. This will allow us to invest in transportation, water, broadband, clean energy, and more. Remember, the Rebuild Illinois, albeit it was a $45 billion 6-year capital bill, of all of those funds, $2.3 billion continues in perpetuity. So, you know, the increase in the gas tax, the adjustment of the COLAs every July, the slowly moving of the sales tax from GRF on fuels to the road fund, that generates $2.3 billion literally in perpetuity. And then that money also flows down to locals, including the county of DuPage and all local municipalities, as well as funds mass transportation, including Metro, which is a big part out there in DuPage as well. And then also in terms of those funds, continued utilization of $1 billion in ARPA funds. So these were the COVID related funds to fund critical water and sewer infrastructure projects and for statewide broadband, including Connect Illinois. Moving on to some DCEO grants. It also included $100 million to DCEO for community driven broadband expansion to help close the digital divide. And then also lead line replacement, which is a problem all over, including in DuPage, supports a first year of the federal IIJA lead service line replacement loans at $113 million, as well as $2 million in new IEPA funding to provide lead service line inventory and planning grants. So that is something that we should keep an eye out at DuPage and be applying for these lead service line replacement loans through IEPA. Let's see. Allows us, you know, the money in there as well allows us to continue competing for other billions of dollars out of that 1.3 in the IIJA. A couple other items to note in that House Bill 900 budget, again, should be helpful to some of the folks in DuPage. And if they're, you know, not aware, should be made aware that there was $75 million for hotel jobs recovery grants in that budget. There was $50 million for restaurant employment and stabilization grants. There was $100 million for federal broadband assistance and $70 million for interest payments due on the unemployment trust fund debt, which I'll touch on briefly. And then you had Senate Bill 2803. So this was another bill. And by the way, we did send a summary, you know, in written format. I know Dave Sullivan forwarded that on to you guys. If you haven't gotten it yet, you will have it shortly in written format that covers a lot of this as well. So FY22 supplemental appropriations. So in addition to those things that I just mentioned, you had out of the COVID money and FY22 surplus GRF money, $2.7 billion was contributed to the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. So they paid back about half of that loan, and they've basically kicked the rest of it down the road for 6 months. There was $898 million to pay off legacy debt for state employee health insurance, $300 million additional payment to the state pension fund, which you don't have to hear very much, $230 million to pay off College of Illinois, which was this, you could lock yourself into what the cost of college in Illinois is today, and then use it, you know, 10 years from now. That was underwater. They've now brought that above water and contributed $230 million to that program as well. And then you had the House Bill 4700, which is referred to as the BIMP. So the House Bill 900 is basically all the numbers, right, where all the money's going. And then the BIMP is, you know, how do you actually implement, you know, it's like further directs that money. You had that hospitality and industry grant at $75 million. It gives some more kind of sort of flavor to what that is. Eligible restaurants and taverns had that $50 million. And then there's also what's called arts and cultural organizations. There's a $50 million fund for COVID relief for them as well. You had, I know mental health is of big import to DuPage as well. We have this new statewide 988 fund to fund a suicide prevention and mental health crisis hotline. and transferred 5 million into the fund from the statewide 911. So the thought being here is that instead of folks constantly calling 911 for what would otherwise be considered mental health issues, there's now a separate 988 fund that people will call and get mental health assistance as well. I know the opioid settlement was of great import as well. There was the opioid remediation state trust fund and an office of opioid settlement administration with the DHS that will oversee the expenditure of amounts received from the recent opioid case settlement. So stay tuned for how that shakes out. But I anticipate that DuPage will also see part of the funds from that settlement. And then also this supplemental bill extended and increased road fund subsidies for transit and passenger rail of about 7.5 million. Part of that will go to Metro as well. And then probably the biggest one was beginning in FY23 for the first time that I can remember, and continuing in perpetuity, in the increases that deposited into the LGDF from 6.06% to 6.16% of income taxes collected from individuals and pass-through entities, estimated increase about 25 million. I can tell you in conversations with both the Speaker, the Senate President, and the Governor himself, that the plan is a path to continue this upward. So albeit it's a 0.1% increase, it's moving in the right direction. And then there was also some erroneous payments based on the new evidence-based funding distributions, mainly to the city of Chicago. So that's going to be, there was a supplemental appropriation of about $87.5 million that'll allow ISB to pay a district that lost funding as a result of these inappropriate payments. Also specific to DuPage and other counties, there's now a new requirement that sheriffs receive a salary of not less than 80% of the salary of the state's attorney for that county. And the state must reimburse each county 2/3 of that cost, right? So obviously trying to get some parity there and get some more folks interested in serving in those sheriff capacities. Then there was the Omnibus Senate Bill 157 bill for revenue. And I think this is what Chairwoman Dessart referenced, which was how is this going to be tax relief for the citizens of DuPage? So one, there was a tax rebate. So a general rebate eligible to individual income tax filers. It's $50 for a single filer, $100 for joint filers, and then $100 for up to 3 dependents. Really depends on incomes. $200,000 for singles, $400,000 for joint filers are eligible. So I would say, based on the median income of DuPage, the vast majority of folks will be able to take advantage of these general rebates. There was also property tax rebates. People who qualify current income tax credit for property taxes will get an additional $300 rebate. And then a couple one of note, I will spend just a moment on the motor fuel tax suspension. So in Rebuild Illinois, there was a COLA built in every July 1st that the motor fuel tax will go up with an inflationary index. Obviously with hyperinflation, people are sensitive to that. So they delayed the COLA for July 1st until January 1st of next year. So folks will not see a 2.2 cent increase. So putting money back in the pockets of folks filling up the gas tank. But we did not lose any money in the road fund because we supplemented that with a 1-year transfer of the LUS fund money to the road fund. And quite honestly, it wasn't the road fund. We battled against that and won. It goes to the transportation renewal fund so that we make sure that money doesn't stay at IDOT. It trickles down to the locals, including DuPage and mass transit, like the rest of the motor fuel tax money does. So we spend an awful lot of time negotiating the contours of what that looked like. And then finally, we have the grocery tax suspension. So a 1% tax for FY23. Folks will not be paying that anymore. So basically, it's $1 for every $100 you spend that you're going to save at the grocery store. And then you had a sales tax holiday implemented, whether you like them or not. But if you're going to shop for school, do it between August 5th and the 14th. For up to $125 in clothing and school supplies, you'll pay no state sales tax on those. You had also an increase in the earned income tax credit increased the credit from 18 to 20% of the federal amount and expands the coverage. And then also had several tax benefits to businesses, including expansion of the Edge tax credit, the River Edge development tax credit, the film tax credit, and the live theater tax credit, as well as a biodiesel and renewable diesel sales tax exemption. And then had a couple other things on hospitals, organ donors, electric vehicles, some stuff on mining equipment and agritourism. And then really made a shot at trying to get these microchips manufacturers to locate to Illinois with a pretty big package that would be beneficial for folks to take advantage of that. And then finally, Senate Bill 1975 had the property tax relief package, increases the value of the general homestead exemptions in counties contiguous to Cook, which includes DuPage. So those homestead exemptions go from 6,000 to 8,000. Currently, the exemption is 10,000 in Cook and 6,000 in the collar counties, including DuPage. So residents will see a $2,000 increase in that exemption. Next one, specific to DuPage, increases the value of the senior citizen homestead exemption from 5,000 to 8,000. Used to be 8,000 in Cook and 5,000 in the collars. And then there was a couple of things on the senior freeze, a few things on veterans as well. One specific to 6 counties, including DuPage, that allows veterans. There'll be a study conducted on the impact of disabled veteran homestead exemptions in counties, including St. Clair, Lake, Will, Madison, Rock Island, and DuPage itself. I'm not going to, I won't go through every particular, but man, there was a huge law enforcement / crime response package that was passed as well. A whole bunch of things, trying to take care of everything from carjackings to body cams, increased use of expressway cams, including things on the tollway and those highways that run through DuPage, expanded the crime of possession of burglary tools, created a new offense of organized retail theft because of the smash and grabs, which occurred obviously in places like downtown Naperville, Aurora, and other places within DuPage County. Lowered the retirement age from 60 to 55, allowed retiring officers to purchase their badge and firearms, has a grant program for off-hours childcare for first responders, expanded the purview of the current Motor Vehicle Theft and Insurance Verification Council, a whole bunch of other protections as well. One specific, I think to you guys in DuPage as well, created a fund for law enforcement recruitment and retention grants. So again, something we should be looking at taking advantage of. Extended the 2-year sunset on the current eavesdropping and RICO laws, prohibited ghost guns, expanded the use of expressway cameras, as a new crime reduction task force, and then finally a couple of hits for DuPage where there was an attempt in House Bill 4643. We were successful in bottling that up in the Rules Committee, but it was an attempt at undoing this protection on the Animal Welfare Act. So I know that was of specific importance, but that didn't move. It stayed in rules and continues to stay there. And then I know there was 2 specific programs or projects we were working on for DuPage. I'm still waiting for an update. Maybe you guys can help me, but I've been working with Deputy Governor Andy Minar on both of these. One was there was a $45 million program for rebuilding Main Street. There is a Prairie Food Co-op on Main Street in Lisle. They're trying to get an $807 million grant on a $2.4 million build. I'm told that they accepted the application. They were likely to get it. I just haven't heard if they in fact got it or not yet. And then I know DuPage had submitted an application that I believe they were going to get it, but I haven't had confirmation yet on a $2.3 million stormwater management project to improve drainage in Country Club Highlands and Addison Township in unincorporated Elmhurst. And then finally, I know we were successful because I did get confirmation of this a couple months ago that we got the $17.5 million through Rebuild Illinois and a DCO grant for electrical upgrades on the wastewater treatment plant. So I know that that was an amazing mouthful
Yeah.
of information. I can't imagine everybody thinking what was all of that, but you do have it in written format. A lot of really, I think, good stuff for DuPage County. And happy to kind of sort of answer any questions on any particulars there.
Fantastic. Any questions from the committee?
Where did it come from, the whole legislative rundown?
Oh, I have it right here. Cheryl Marquez sent it.
Oh, yeah, Cheryl sent it.
Yeah.
It came out 4/11/2022. I do have a question because I've invested thousands of dollars since 2002 in the College of Illinois Fund. I didn't realize that it was underwater. And you said during your presentation that they've now bailed it out, but have they fixed the problem? So it doesn't, was it mismanaged? Or I mean, why was it underwater? And now that they threw money at it, have they fixed the overall problem so it doesn't go underwater again?
Yeah, so I think the answer is yes, yes, and yes. I think the problem has been largely fixed. It was mainly, this program, like pension funds or any other investment, right? There was investments, and it went through some pretty tough times, right? It went through the 9/11 attacks. It went through the housing crash of 2008. It went through the COVID initial crash, and then the rise in kind of sort of fall of markets there as well. So it was subject to the markets. It has been more diversified, and it has been put into what I would call safer investments, right? So you don't have this quite, upswing when there's this swing in the market. So I think from a structural perspective, the answer is yes, that's been largely fixed. And then there was, I forget the exact number, but it was like 230 million that they bailed it out. So yes, any current participants in that program should have no fear that you are actually going to be able to get your money out when your child is ready to go to school. So.
Awesome, thank you. So none of my colleagues have any questions right now, so I'll just ask you to maybe just quickly address some of our 2022 legislative agenda items. One was to build local public health infrastructure. Anything pop up about that?
Yeah, so I would say just generally speaking, the state's budget does have a number of pieces, some of which I mentioned that probably got kind of sort of lost in translation, but they are in print format. I think that we sent you that there is an awful lot of assistance, like, for example, this 988 line, right, for mental illness, those types of things, right? That's really going to assist everyone in every local government, including the counties, right, where that's state funding that takes care of a larger problem, as like a social safety net type of help. There's also a number of other appropriations through the state and grants that are out there that are going to help, on kind of what I would call those social safety net types of programs at the county as well. And, obviously now that session's over, we'll be able to start taking a look, Chip and myself and Dave and others at what are those grant program opportunities through DCO, DFS, and other agencies.
Do we still have Chip on? Okay, thanks, Mark. Let's move over to Chip. I can't imagine what Chip has to say because Mark said everything, and we appreciate it. Thanks for being here, Mark. Anything
Anytime.
Chip, at
I
all?
don't have anything. There's nothing that I can say that's better than what Mark said.
All right. question-
Thanks, Chip.
Oh, just a
Well
quick-
done, Mark.
It was a great report. Member Chaplin, go ahead and say that.
Yeah, great report. Appreciate you guys' time coming here, talking to us. It's been really great to hear from you. So, and I appreciate the written report as well. So thank you very much.
It has, guys, as the chairwoman of legislative, it has really been profoundly meaningful to get to know you better and to figure out what you do more thoroughly. And it's made me appreciate your services even more.
I just had one
Appreciate it. No, been a pleasure.
quick question, and maybe this is something that handled here, but I mean, like, I'm hearing that there's lead service type
Oh, yeah,
grants
EPA
and things like
grants,
that.
Right.
How do we get those grants? How do we apply for those grants?
Yeah, so it's going to be largely through IEPA. Some of it is just, the traditional state revolving loan fund, right, where there's low interest loans that you can tap into for that. A lot of it is kind of sort of unwritten at this point because a lot of it's underfunded through the IIJA federal $1.3 trillion infrastructure program that's like underwriting a lot of that lead service line replacement. So, you know, we continue to, you know, I just had Director Kim from IEPA actually at the Metro West Council of Government with their drive down in Springfield. So we actually talked at length about this. So we'll continue to follow up on like, what's the process, you know, to go after some of these dollars. I know, for example, Batavia and a couple of other places have, you know, already like started the process, you know, at a local municipal level of putting together, you know, what is their inventory of lead service lines and that type of stuff. So if folks have not already done that, the time is now, right, to start like inventorying and getting all that documentation together so that you can apply for these once they come out.
Yeah, that's, I was gonna, I know with the like water service hookups, the EPA offers a loan and it's done through the villages. So I know Downers Grove has applied for some of these things. So I think it might be the villages applying for these loans and then helping their
What about the
their
unincorporated
customers.
areas?
Well, then the county would probably have to do it.
Well, that's
Right, because then you
okay.
have to have a vehicle to pay the loan back
Right.
through the government. So I think that's how.
So when legislative comes down that offers opportunities for grants like this lead line grant, do you let Shara Marquet know so that she can
Yeah, that's probably
let the various departments of the county know? I don't
Yes, so we get a notice of like when there was just recently one that came out that I just previewed, right? It's like a 2-page document that comes out. I forget what agency submits it, but it might be DCO, but I don't remember. It's actually not DCO. But it comes from the state and kind of sort of lists. Maybe it's from COGFA, I think is where it actually comes from. In any event, it lists like all the grant opportunities that are coming up. So we go through that. Chip, Dave, myself, we go through that and kind of sort of comb that for clients of like, hey, are there any opportunities here? And then we'll forward that along. But the last one that came about there was nothing in there that DuPage would have availed itself of.
Member Chaplin?
And I did misspeak. I just want to make for the record, it was Westmont that applied for those, not Downers Grove. So yeah, just so no, because there's
Yeah.
some issues not going on out there, but it was Westmont that did it. So yeah.
Yeah, and to your point about that, you're right, it's typically the local
Oh,
government.
Mark, you broke up. I'm sorry.
Because it's got to be underwritten by a revenue stream, which is typically through the water bills themselves. It's how they like.
Yeah. All right.
I'm sorry. I said, yeah, it's typically the local government, the village, township, municipalities that apply for those because there's got to be a revenue stream to pay back the water.
Got it. All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much. Really great seeing you. I look
Thank you.
sometime soon. And thank you so much. So at this point, any old business, new business? Without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you.